Hi guys, welcome or welcome back to my channel and welcome to my November reading wrap up. I feel like all my wrap ups for the past few months have started out the exact same way, but November was a pretty good reading month for me. I definitely enjoyed all the books that I read and would recommend them all to you guys, so I'm excited to get into it and talk about each book that I read. There weren't any that I really strongly disliked, but then on the flip side of that, there weren't any 5-star new favorites that I'm now obsessed with. So somewhere in the middle, kind of an average reading month I would say. I did read a pretty diverse array of genres though, which was nice to kind of step out of my comfort zone and stray away from my usual romance. And I also had a good balance of reading different formats as well. I listened to some really great audiobooks that I'd recommend, and then I enjoyed my time with the physical books that I read as well. So with all that, let's jump right into the wrap up. The first book I read in November I listened to on audio, and that is You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose. All of her books that I've read, I've listened to the audiobooks of, and I feel like they're all so well done, so I would recommend listening to each of her books. In this book, we follow our main character, Grace. She is from New York, and she's very used to the city type of lifestyle, all the hustle and bustle and the busyness with her job. So she is in need of a little quiet, cozy escape. So she ends up booking this very quaint Airbnb on this ranch in Wyoming, and when she gets there, she is greeted by the owner of the home named Calvin, and she and Calvin really seem to hit it off right away. He kind of shows her the Wyoming lifestyle. He is very much a rancher type of guy, living off the land, owning animals, farming, that kind of thing. And they really take a liking to one another. But as Grace kind of explores outside of this Airbnb, she feels like the other people in the town are a little bit weird. Something seems a little bit off with the whole situation, and it follows things from there. And I gave this one 3.25 stars. I did really enjoy it in the moment. It kind of dumps you into the thick of things. You are dropped right into the action, which I love. There's not a ton of build up. There's no details to bog down the story at all. It is very straightforward. It felt like there was just enough going on to keep my interest, but not too much to where I was ever confused at any point. I will say though, for pretty much the entire book, it read more like a romance than it did a thriller. And I'm like, okay, what is gonna be the thrilling aspect here? And then the ending, it did pick up, but I will say I predicted what happened. Not because it was obvious, but just based on previous books that I had read. But still a fun time, very much a popcorn thriller, and I would recommend it, but just very forgettable. This one didn't stick with me at all. I actually forgot the characters' names until I looked it up right before I went to film this wrap up, so not anything that's gonna have a lasting impact on me, but I did very much enjoy myself while I was reading it. And then I listened to another audiobook. I listened to Two Can Play by Ali Hazelwood. This is her latest little novella release, and it's actually only exclusively available as an audiobook. And in this one, we follow Jesse and Viola. They work for rival video game companies, and there is this new game that is coming out, and they need developers for it, and they want both companies that Jesse and Viola work for to collaborate and make it a joint effort, because they feel like they both bring things to the table that will work well together for this specific game. So they end up hosting this kind of corporate retreat for the two rival video game companies to go on to kind of partake in some bonding activities to put aside their differences. And it's a little bit awkward, especially for Jesse and Viola, because they had a previous encounter, and from there, anytime they've seen each other, it's been a bit weird because of what happened initially. And I liked this one. I gave it 3 stars. I do feel like Ali Hazelwood does novellas really well. She really packs the perfect amount in to where you feel like you get a sufficient story. But I will say with this one, I felt like the novella was all I needed. I wasn't really craving a full-length novel from these characters. They weren't my very favorite, and I never got super invested in them, but I did have a really good time. I liked the setup, I liked the storyline, and I really liked the setting. I would recommend it for the winter time because of the setting, because this corporate retreat takes place at this mountain ski lodge. There were lots of snow activities, and it did feel great for the winter season, so I would recommend listening to this one now. It was a very short and sweet, easy listen. The next 3 books that I read were for a reading vlog that I filmed of reading books on my physical TBR. So if you want more in-depth thoughts as I was reading these books, definitely check that vlog out. I'll link it above and below for you guys. The first book that I finished for that video is The Girl in 6E by A.R. Torre. This one is actually considered an erotic thriller. Our main character is named Deanna, but she goes by Jessica when she's working as a cam girl, and she makes all of her money camming, so there's no need for her to to really leave her apartment, which she hasn't left her apartment in over 3 years. She's locked away because she's afraid if she leaves, she has the desire and the urge to kill someone. So she's keeping herself tucked away in her apartment to protect everyone else from herself. That is until something ends up happening that makes her really feel like she needs to get out and leave. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with this one. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I picked it up at the perfect time because I was in the middle of 2 other books for that reading vlog, and they were both very slow paced, and I just wanted a very quick, easy read. And this book very much gave me that. It is short chapters, very gripping, couldn't put it down, finished it in just over 24 hours, and it was exactly what I was wanting out of this book. I will say I wasn't expecting it to kind of be the way that it was. It does go into a lot of detail of our main character's job as a cam girl. It is very sexually explicit, which I wasn't expecting it to go into as much detail as it did, but you really get a lot of her interactions with her clients and what all her job really entails. There are also a lot of dark and uncomfortable subject matters touched on in this book, so make sure you look up trigger warnings before going into this one. But the ending really did have an uplifting message, and I loved how everything came together. You get lots of different perspectives in this book, and you're kind of trying to figure out how they might all tie together, and there are a few other mystery aspects as well that we're trying to uncover. But I found myself really just enjoying our main character and just her day-to-day and her as a character so much that I didn't really care about trying to uncover the mystery. This is actually the start to a series. There's 2 more books that follow our main character, which I would be interested to continue on. I'm not in a huge rush to pick it up because I feel like the ending in this one was satisfying, but again, I had such a fun time that I would like to know what more goes on in our main character's life. There were a couple moments in here that felt super unrealistic and just overly fictional. Like, I know it's a book, but it was to the point of being a bit ridiculous, and I just would have liked a little more explanation at some moments, but that was really the biggest critique I had of the book. Other than that, this one was such a good time, and this book gave me that feeling that I was wanting of just not being able to put a book down and being so all consumed by it in the moment, and I hadn't felt that in a long time before picking up this book. The next book I read for that video is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This was a very anticipated read for me because I'd heard the best things about it. This is a dark academia, kind of mystery, kind of fantasy book. In it, we follow our main character, Alex Stern. She ends up getting a scholarship to attend Yale University because she has this special ability to be able to see ghosts. She ends up joining this group at Yale that kind of police all the different secret societies that take place there. She's really just making sure they're all doing what they're supposed to be doing, and her special ability really helps her out with some of the rituals and things that these secret societies partake in. There's something that ends up happening on campus that Alex kind of gets entangled in as she's becoming invested in these secret societies and trying to figure out if they might have something to do with what's going on or if something else might be at play. And I gave this one 3.5 stars. Overall, I just found it to be so slow, which I don't mind a slow-paced book, but the slow moments really dragged for me because they felt very tedious. There were a lot of details in here, and I wasn't really interested in the things that were being overly explained. It kind of made me check out, and I just wasn't super invested because of that. There were definitely a lot of things I liked about the book. Like, I thought it was extremely well written and well thought out and a very solid story, and I really enjoyed our main character a lot. I found her to be very complex, very interesting. She was also very funny and witty, and I just really enjoyed her. I really liked learning about her backstory, and I liked her relationship with her mentor and with her friends, but the moments like that I was enjoying, we really didn't get much of, and the focus was really more on the secret societies and kind of the mystery aspect, which I wasn't that invested in. It did feel like a lot of info dumping, which again just really made it drag for me, unfortunately. I don't know if I just went in with too high of expectations, but I will say I was holding out for the ending because everyone says that even though this book has a lot of build up, the ending is worth it and really pays off, and I don't really agree with that, to be completely honest. I think maybe because I was more checked out and not invested, that kind of overtook any feelings of shock or surprise that the ending brought about, and there was definitely one thing that I was hoping would happen in the end that didn't happen, so I found myself to be just a bit disappointed with how things played out. This book also is the start to a series, which I'm really not interested at all in continuing on because I wasn't invested enough in the characters. So sadly, a bit of a disappointment. I know this one is such a favorite for a lot of people, but sadly just didn't work out the same way for me. And then I read probably my most highly anticipated read of the year, which is Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I'm Sally Rooney's #1 fan. Normal People is my favorite book ever, and I just love her writing style so much, so I could not wait for this book. In this one, we follow our two main characters, Peter and Ivan. They are brothers with a 10-year age gap. Peter is the older brother, and he is more well established. He is a lawyer, but definitely trying to figure out some things in his life and definitely has struggles of his own. Ivan, the younger brother, he is more of like an outcast. He has a little bit of trouble fitting in. He's known as a chess prodigy, and he goes around to different chess tournaments competing. This book definitely explores not only the relationship between Peter and Ivan as brothers and that sibling dynamic, but at the start of the book, they've recently lost their father, so it's also exploring them navigating their grief. And they each have different relationships with women in their lives, and it's exploring those relationships as well. I really did like this one a lot. It wasn't a 5-star, but it was a 4.25-star for me, so definitely my favorite book of the month that I read, and I was not let down or disappointed by this one. I just don't think I connected with it quite as much as her other books. One thing I really loved about this book is that the writing style changes depending on which brother we're following. Peter's chapters were more like stream of consciousness, very staccato, incomplete sentences, a little bit hard to follow, and definitely took some getting used to his chapters. Whereas Ivan's chapters, I very much connected to him as a character. He is an overthinker. He definitely is very aware of everything around him and is very careful with his actions and what he has to say, because he's very concerned with how he's perceived by others. And in his chapters, we actually get the perspective of the woman he's in a relationship with named Margaret, which I really enjoyed, because I think since Ivan is so aware of how he's perceived by others and he is overthinking it, getting Margaret's perspective kind of allows you to see Ivan from another set of eyes and see how he is perceived. So I really enjoyed that. My reading experience was kind of interesting because this book is broken up into 3 parts, and in part 1 I found myself enjoying Ivan's chapters a whole lot more than Peter's, and then in part 2 I think I was way more interested in what was going on in Peter's life in that time, so I enjoyed his chapters more. And then for part 3 I enjoyed them both equally, so it was kind of interesting. I don't know if that was intentionally done or if it was just kind of coincidence that I happened to enjoy the chapters in that way, but I thought it was very well done. It was a little bit slow going at parts, and again, I don't know if I completely connected to these characters despite really enjoying Ivan's character and relating to him. I don't really know what it was. I want to say it's because I'm a woman and it's harder to relate to a male character, but they were written by a woman, so I don't think that's it. I also don't think it's the fact that it is a brother relationship, because I have a brother, so I don't know. I just didn't completely connect to them as characters and to the story as I did with her previous books, but I still enjoyed it a ton. I definitely think the topic of grief is explored so well in here. Sally Rooney just writes in a way that feels very relatable and very personable, and so many good quotes in here that I really just connected to and I found to be so beautifully written, and I just really adored the story a lot. But again, I didn't get the 5-star feeling. It's not my favorite of all time, but did thoroughly enjoy myself while reading it. And then the last book I read in November, I listened to this one on audio as well. That is The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. The audiobook is narrated by Julia Whalen, and it was just fantastic, so I would recommend listening to this one. I have always wanted to read a Kristen Hanna book for the longest time. I hear so many great things about her, and I know she's a favorite author for a lot of people, so I was very excited to give one of her books a try. I did feel like this one would be perfect to pick up around the winter time because it is set in Alaska, and this book is a historical fiction. It takes place in the 1970s, and it's told through the point of view of our main character Lenny, who is a young girl, and we see her relationship with her parents. Her father just came back from the Vietnam War, and the things he experienced there are very much affecting his life when he gets back in many different aspects. At the start of the book, we see that he is struggling to keep a job, so when an opportunity arises for him in Alaska, he picks up the whole family and they move there. And I really liked this one a lot. I did give it 4 stars. I can definitely see why so many people love Kristen Hanna. This book was so beautifully written. It was very emotional, very heart-wrenching, but also very uplifting at times as well. The characters and their struggles that they went through very much felt like realistic things, and I felt like I was in this book with them. I feel like the Alaskan setting is very much what made this book. I've now read 2 books this year set in Alaska, and I don't think I would ever be cut out for that kind of life. It just sounds so strenuous and just not what I'm used to at all. It's basically like they're out there trying to survive, and the setting very much much felt like its own character in a way. It was such a big presence and such a force. It had a really big impact and influence on different people's behavior and just different plot points. It was very much a big part of the story. I read some reviews for this book where people were saying this book made them want to go visit Alaska, and I honestly kind of feel like it did the opposite for me. It just kind of terrified me. It just sounds like such a struggle being out there, and I hate the cold, and it just sounded like a very depressing kind of place, but there were definitely very uplifting moments of the book. I will say the topics and the subject matter of this book are definitely some tough, dark things that are very real. To me, it didn't feel as hard-hitting. I think just because I've already read several books with this topic, and I do think it's been done better in other books that I've read, so it didn't feel quite as profound to me in this one, but I still thought it was a really great story. It was a very good balance of being heart-wrenching and also heartwarming. I teared up many times, both from how sad it was and how sweet it was. It had a really good balance of ups and downs in here, which made it feel very realistic and like a real depiction of this kind of life. So I did enjoy it overall, would recommend it a lot for winter, and it definitely had me wanting to read more from Kristen Hanna. So those were all the books I read in the month of November. Let me know in the comments if you guys have read any of these books and what your thoughts are on them. Please let me know what y'all read in November, what you liked, what you didn't like, and let's chat about books down below. If you enjoyed, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you are not already, and I will see you guys so soon in the next one. Bye guys.